Hello and welcome to the Money Tree. I'm David Holt and
I'm David Marks.
the Dueling Daves, by the way. And
Dueling Davids.
I'm telling you, did you like my orange shirt?
I do like the orange shirt today, and by the way, since you decided to go with orange, I had to offset that a little bit with some crimson. So
His dad is a diehard Alabama fan. My
Yes.
wife is a diehard Auburn fan, and they're brother and sister, so there
well,
you go. We're trying to represent.
We are, and so far, no major family fights at the dinner table at Thanksgiving or Christmas or Easter.
Well, there was one once.
Well, maybe I missed that, or I was too young to remember.
It was right after my wife and I married, coming home from Fort Payne, listening to the Alabama-Auburn game, and we've never done that again since then.
That it's always good advice to share your finances together as a married couple, but maybe not your sports teams.
Not your sports team.
If you do that, then things can crumble very fast. So,
We appreciate you guys watching the Money Tree, and we hope we can appreciate Mountain Valley bringing us on the show today, and we hope you'll watch and maybe learn a few things. I know I'm learning a lot.
yeah, I am too.
You're just like so smart.
No, well, I think it always goes to show that families can breed a new generation of smarticles. So maybe
Smarticles.
maybe
Is that a word?
I made it up,
Okay.
but it worked, right?
It did work.
Look
And
at
we are going to cover today the life of money.
Yes, the life of money being maybe my plan that I've developed for what you may encounter in your lifetime. So we're going to look at the first slide here that's going to kind of just give you a quick overview for the life of money, if we can do that real fast. We have different stages of life, just like you do with anything you do, and the life of money has different stages too. Now this is according to David Marks. This is not out of any theory by any great author or anything like that, but we have the introduction stage, which is kind of explanatory. Then we have the beginning stage, the earning stage, first job stage, career stage, which you can see on the slide there is a bulk of what you may have. And then we have, of course, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, the retirement stage. So,
Well, and you came up with this all on your own?
I did.
I'm impressed.
I developed this. The ages were what gave me the most trouble trying to find what ages would be appropriate for each one. But I tried to break that down so that we could have a good balance, but that would be age appropriate for each category that we're going to try to hit on today. So.
And I'm assuming the reason you did career is the biggest block is because that's what we spend most of our time doing.
We actually spend most of our time doing that, and it's also a good focus point too to see that we want people to know that your career is something that you want to put a lot of time into, not just a job, but a career.
Yeah.
There's a total difference there, and we're going to cover both of those.
Okay.
So,
I'm ready.
all
Let's
right.
get started.
Well, let's do that. First, let's talk about an introduction. This is for parents and maybe, parents, or if you have very young kids, and this would start with the ages of about birth to 5. It's something that every little kid you can see, they may run up and say, "Monies." And they may think, they find a quarter, but to them a quarter,
Yes.
right, it's just monies. They don't really have an understanding. So from about age birth, of course, you're not going to be giving my nephew's 9 months old, and I'm not going to be throwing him 100s and expecting him to make me proper change.
Correct.
But you do want to let them have an idea of what money is. Money buys, money trades, money does these things. Which gets you to the part of what we would like to talk about, the beginning parts of money. And if we can look at the very first slide, this covers from age 5, I guesstimated to 10.
Okay.
So with age 10, there's some different things we would like to do. So would you like to cover a couple of those? You've raised children, so you can see.
I was still stuck back in the introduction. When we talk about the introduction, we're talking about when kids get birthday money and that kind of stuff. You squirrel it away, you put it in a savings account. You should start them a savings account just right off the bat.
Sure, and that's one of the tenets. Can I use that word? We'll fabricate that.
Word.
Tenets. That's two big words today. Well, one I made up, but we'll talk about the tenets of age 5 to 10 in the beginning. So that introduction brings in where you have those monies, and yes, you are putting some away. But then one of the major things we want to do here is we are teaching the kids about money, and we want to start a jar. It can be a piggy bank, it can be a savings account or something like that for them to put money in. So you start that jar for them to have their money be part of that, because every time we walk around as adults, as men, a lot of times, what do we have? We have either
A wallet.
Or a money clip, right? So we have something that we house.
You carry a money clip?
I do not. I carry a wallet.
Okay.
I'm kind of partial. Actually, the wallet I have, this is kind of an interesting story. The wallet I carry was given to me by one of my very first students over 11 years ago.
Really?
His name's Hayden Tilley. He's a student at Auburn now, and going into building science, I believe. And he gave me the wallet as a gift for Christmas, and you know, I'm kind of sentimental on some things, and Hayden was a great young man, and so I still carry my money in that wallet.
That's good.
It's a little worn, but it is.
I had someone today tell me that money was obsolete, and I was like, really? I guess because they were assuming you just carry plastic all the time.
Right.
But anyway, I digress. We're back to the beginning stage. We're teaching children to put money away. Now, back in my day, I'll never forget, I had a huge blue pig, a plastic blue pig, and I would always put money in it. And the thing about it is, it had no outlet to open it.
Oh.
You know how they used to have like a opening at the
little
bottom?
cork at the bottom.
That you would pull out? Well, this one had none, so you had to fill it completely up, and then you had to cut it open to get all the money out, which really, isn't that the neat thing? You know, they talk about people freezing their credit cards and ice and that kind of deal, but the thing of it is to put money inside and save it and save it and save it. So that was just a neat way that my mom and dad, they may have probably just bought them somewhere, I don't know. But I thought it was kind of neat to put money in there.
Well, we live in such a immediate, right now, a lot of people will say drive-through society, that, you know, a lot of kids don't see mom in the kitchen cooking for a long time or dad, and they don't see maybe the time that it takes to do some things. They see us driving through a drive-through, getting something very quick. So they think, therefore, buying things is always an immediate response. So this is why those 5 to 10 years and having that jar, that piggy bank is so pivotal, because you can take that money and show them that, hey, sometimes you've got to start storing money away to spend it.
And that brings us to the next point. The stuff you're talking about is teaching them to save, to give to charity, and also to let the children decide what they want to do with it.
Absolutely. And I've actually broken this down into different categories. And looking at that age 5 to 10 slide there in the beginning, you can see that I've divided it into sections. And right above the divisor of into the sections, I've got where you start teaching them about giving. Because I think it's very important from the very start to teach your children to give 10%, whatever it may be. You may feel they need to do more than that, but I've kind of set the standard on 10%, and that if you don't go to church, or if you do, give it to your local church. If you don't, find a charity that you care about, whether it be St. Jude's Children's Hospital, that's always a great place, or anything like that, that those kids could take 10% of that money and give to someone else. It's very important to teach the children to give back.
And if you don't teach them while they're young, they won't get it when they get older.
Absolutely. There is a less likely chance that they will be willing to give to a charity or give to an organization as they get older. And of course, we know that churches and nonprofit organizations wouldn't exist without donors. So, you know, it's very important. It's not just something that's on a public television little chant there that they say brought to you by viewers like you. So it's very important. Now, when we break this down, 10% right off the bat goes to charity. So where do you think the next part of that we would want to give?
Savings.
Yes. I would say automatically take 20% and put it in savings. 20%. And when you start setting barriers and you start setting percentages on this, it makes it a lot easier to keep it consistent. And we definitely want our money flow through our life to be as consistent as possible. Consistency, consistency, consistency. So,
well, and the thing of it is, you have to train children when they're younger to have good habits, maybe going to bed, eating different things. You have to train them on the money as well.
Absolutely. If you have a young child, and you've raised children, so you know, if you have a young child and you let them go to bed at 8 o'clock one night, 11:30 the next night, 4 a.m. the next time, what's going to happen to them at school and during their routine?
Yeah, there's not a routine.
There's no routine, and we know that will produce one cranky child. So let's...
Or a nephew.
Or nephew. Sometimes. I need my sleep. I'm definitely a napper.
Hey,
and
I'm
a
the one
sleeper.
that's got to be in bed by 10, you know. I'm the one that gets cranky.
Well, you know, we all live on the wild side.
And the other thing is 70% is the kid's choice. They get to decide what they want to do with it.
And that's another part of this, is that you want to show them the reward of having that money. That, you know, 70% can be spent on whatever they would like. So let's say they want to go to the store and buy this certain toy that costs them $5. Well, if they haven't enough money in the 70% to buy the 5, you need to say, okay, we've got to do something else to earn more money or whatever it may be.
And I think that's a common mistake that I made is, we save it, we don't let them spend it, let them make choices to spend it. So again, we're trying to train them to make really good choices. And so this is just a plan David came up with as an idea to teach them from age 5 to 10, saving 10%, giving to charity or a church 10%, saving 20%, and then you've got 70% that you have discretion over.
That's theirs to spend however they would like. So let's take that and let's walk to the next part if we can. Let's look at the next slide if we can. And that is from age 11 to 15, which is the earning stage, okay? The earning stage is where the child no longer is just handed money, but the child actually learns to earn that money.
And this is a great example of what you did as a 11-year-old boy.
Sure.
Why don't you tell them what you used to do?
Well, I used to actually get out and push mow my neighbors' yards, and I think it was for like $5 a week. It was very little, but man, it felt so good. During the middle of that task of mowing, it was hot. I usually had my music going on the old battery-operated tape decks that would start to drag after an amount of time. But
kids don't have a clue what that is.
Oh, they have no idea. Yeah, but it only weighed like 35 pounds on my side. Yeah. So, but when I got finished and I got that money, it was an awesome feeling. And we need to teach working habits to this younger generation. Yeah. We definitely need to do that. So as they do this, we're going to add in a new portion of this or a new section to this, whatever you want to call it.
So let's look at the slide.
Yes, if we're looking at the slide, we want to introduce a thing called gross and net to this age group. Now, again, we're looking at, still a young child, 11 to 15, but they're more mature than the 5 to 10-year-old. So we want them to start understanding that we have a gross and a net factor. So can you break down those factors for us, those two terms?
Well, your gross is the total, and then the net is what you get after you pay your taxes.
Yes, and all your fees, retirement, that would be
I think that was a trick question, like you weren't sure I knew the right answer.
I think you did, but what I was looking for is so many people put it in different layman terms. Okay. So that you might say, well, gross is my salary, and net is what I bring home.
Same thing, yeah.
In our area. So I wanted to see what you might say to that compared to what I might say to that.
Okay.
So there was not really a wrong answer unless you said, oh, I have no idea. But in the gross...
And I may say that before it's over.
Well, I may also, I promise you. The gross versus net is where you're going to take 20% of the money that child earns and you're going to put it into an account for them. 20%.
For example, a car fund.
Absolutely.
A college fund, whatever you want to put it in.
I would suggest as a parent, this is an account that you may open under your name or their name. If you want to put their name and put your name under that. Take that 20%, put it into a savings account, and put it as a car fund or a college textbook fund. Because do you know what on average right now 2017 students will spend on textbooks?
Well, I know one book from my daughter just purchased was like $450.
Yes.
That's one book for one class out of 5.
To tell you a little story about this that I've waited for a while to tell on David here, he put together a trip to Tuscaloosa and Auburn and Jacksonville State for our seniors and some of our students in our school. And the students that we were allowed to take to Tuscaloosa, when we went into the bookstore, I carried some of them back to the bookstore part. Everybody else was looking at shirts and looking at hats, and we went and looked at the textbooks, and their jaws were on the floor because they couldn't believe how expensive some of those books were. And on average, this is just an average. And of course, your field of study will make a differentiation in this, but a student will spend $1,200 a year just on textbooks.
That's true.
So that 20% you're taking from their labor is a good way to teach them, A, about gross versus net, because you're teaching them about taxes. Then while you're teaching them about taxes, you're also setting some money aside for when they go to college one day and they have to buy those $1,200 worth of books. Or if you don't think your child's going to go to college, you may want to save it as a car fund.
That's true. Now, one other thing I'd like to share with you this week, just like I believe it was Tuesday of this week, we had something at Fort Payne High School called Mad Money, where they come in, they're randomly given a job with a bring home pay per month. They have a sibling, a partner, could be a spouse or whatever. And some of them had children of various ages. So the students had to visit all the stations, and most of them always wanted to go to grandmother to keep the child for $300 a month, as opposed to daycare, which gets close to like $950.
Yes.
And so they're like, no wonder my mom's so cranky when I ask her for $10. You know, there's no money. There's no money.
There's not there.
That's true.
Well, and children get less expensive with age, right?
Well, you can say that, but not necessarily. Bigger toys, bigger price tags, but the formative years when you're buying diapers and formula and daycare, those are expensive days too.
Well, $272,000 is the estimated cost to raise a child from birth to age 18.
272.
So there you go. So parents, buckle up if you're thinking about having children. Moving on just a little bit here into our sections, and I will chase rabbits, I'm sorry, is when we divide this into sections, again, looking at this, we're still going to keep that 10% donated to a charity or a church. Remember, we're building that from 5 to 10. That 20% has went to you as the parent, where you're teaching them about gross versus net. Then 20% still goes into savings, which leaves them with 50%. Yes, and that goes towards their needs and their wants.
Yep. And children need to learn make some choices with their money. They need to, do I want this? Do I want that? Do I have the money to pay for it? Again, if we're not training them to make good choices with their money, then they're going to be at a loss when they get a paycheck and they're like, hey, where's the rest of my paycheck?
Right. We want to teach them about who that FICA guy is who's taking money away from them. So let's say you raise a 14-year-old daughter who fits into this bracket. What would be something that a 14-year-old girl typically would want to buy?
I would say, oh goodness, clothes, makeup, that kind of stuff.
Sure. So let's say looking at clothes, is that a want or is that a need?
Well, probably that's more of a want, because we would provide, but she might want a certain name brand or a certain top or a certain pair of shoes that everybody else is wearing.
And you are putting the arrow right in the bullseye on that. That's where we're talking about.
Is that a good answer?
That was an awesome answer, because, you know, parents, it is our responsibility to take care of our children and to raise children. However, if they want something that might be more fashionable, that might not be what we think would be what they need, then that's where the 50% money goes to their wants. So we want to make sure that we understand what their wants and their needs are in contrast, and make sure that, you know, if they want to buy a CD, well, that's not really a need, or download an MP3 now, that would be a want. I don't know if we really have CDs anymore.
Maybe a few for the old folks.
Maybe a few. I still have them in my vehicle.
Me too.
Which brings us to our next. If we can look at our next slide, this is going to be the first job category. And the first job category is where hopefully we've taught our children work ethic, we've taught them about gross versus net, and we've kind of prepared them for, all right, what's going to be coming up as you go to work for an employer. This is not, you know, helping clean up the trash for grandmother or painting the house for your uncle. This is, you're going to work, earning money, paying taxes. And 16, I think, is a good start, because most students can drive and most students are ready to work for a company at 16.
Well, they want the money. They want to spend it on what they want to.
Absolutely. So now this is where I really need your help.
Okay.
All right. At this point in time, we want our students or our children to learn to apply and interview for a job. So give us some pointers that parents could sit down with their child who's 15 rolling into 16 and say, all right, this is something you need to focus on as you're teaching them to go apply and interview for a job.
The first thing I would tell you is help them understand it's not a teenager that's going to interview them. It's the old people here, and you have to impress them. Just recently, I conducted interviews for lifeguards at the city pool, and most of those came in khaki pants. The girls came in nice dresses. I had one show up in a ball uniform. I had another one to come in chewing gum and the shirt untucked.
Oh, wow.
I'm just like, really? Did anybody not tell you about how you're supposed to dress when you go for a job interview?
Yes.
You know, you can never redo a first impression.
That's exactly right.
Never redo it. So just give them some pointers, ask them some questions. One of the most important questions is, tell me about yourself, and kids are afraid of that question.
Sure.
I mean, talk about your hobbies, talk about your interests, talk about the things that you enjoy doing. And they're going to try to ask you some very difficult questions to try to see how you'll handle the pressure that you may face. For example, one of the last interviews I did, we did some mock interviews, asking what they would do if someone came through the gas station and didn't have enough money. Well, most of them will say, I'd get a loan it to them. So you're going to loan it to everybody that comes through?
Yeah, they want your paycheck.
You know, what are you going to, and you can't give the stuff away.
Sure.
It's not yours to give away.
Right.
So we've got career coaches in our school system that can help. We've got several career preparedness classes that can help. But just remember, if you can help them understand, you can never redo a first impression, and it's usually somebody older that wants them, that's going to be hiring them.
Yes.
And it doesn't necessarily, it could be a human resources person or anybody.
Well, and you want critical thinkers. Even as a lifeguard, and you're talking to a former lifeguard here. So, you know, I've done that as a job. You've got to have someone who can think critically. Even though we may think, hey, that's an awesome job because, hey, it was great sitting in the sun. But what if 2 kids at one time go into the water and neither can swim in the deep end? That happened to me. So you have to be able to kind of think light on your feet there. And that's why it's important to teach them about the aspects of applying for a job and interviewing for a job and getting ready to that. Now,
and let me say one more thing.
Sure.
If kids invest in something, they're paying for something, they usually take much better care of it.
Absolutely.
I can give you a prime example. A real life, your cousin, my daughter, she had a perfectly good vehicle. But upon graduation, she wanted a new car, a newer car. So she and her mom, they decided that was the path to go, and they split the payment. But it's amazing how clean that car is when she's invested in it.
Yes.
Half that payment, and she doesn't want us to drive it.
Really?
Imagine that.
I wonder why.
I have driven it once or twice, but it's so clean. I'm like, this is my daughter's car?
Kind of shocked, right?
Yes. So make them invest in something, and I promise you, you'll see the difference in how much they appreciate it and take care of it.
And that goes back to the wants versus needs. That really does go back to that because she had that, but, you know, there was a want there.
A want of something better.
You know, if she's doing
and
that.
she's working to pay for it.
Absolutely.
And she has the money
great.
every month, and that's the thing right off the top to pay for that.
Well, and that builds into this first job category of, you know, wants versus needs. Because now you're starting to teach them about life. Because parents, I know it would be awesome. I always felt like my dad wanted me to have a better life than he had, and I'm sure his dad did the same. But sometimes having that mentality that we want our kids to have it better than we had it, we put them in a position where we're going to help them make destructive choices later on. So it's good to teach them responsibility to pay for what you have. That is a very good thing.
And it helps you to appreciate it.
Absolutely. So looking at that first job category, again, we have it broken up into different sections. It's divided up there. 10% automatically right off the top. Number one thing goes to charity or church. You're still teaching your children to give, and you're not teaching them just to hoard it all. 20% again is going to that college book fund. Now here's the difference. The 20% is no longer coming from your taking that money out. It's now going to be coming from them taking the money out. So the account that you established in that 5 to 10-year-old range, in that 10 to 15-year-old range, now you're letting them as a 16-year-old put their money, 20%, into that account. And they'll love you for it when they get to college one day and they wanted to, you know, have a pizza one night and they couldn't because they didn't have any money or buy the book they needed. 20% goes into savings, and I know that sounds like we're really chunking this a lot. 50% is needs and wants. And if you think, well, I'm 16 years old and I'm only getting 50% of my net income, you know, we're looking down the road. And this goes to wants versus needs, and that's why we're establishing that. Yes, it may take you longer to spend or to save the money to spend $250 on that Bluetooth functional, flat screen, high def, whatever CD player for your car, but is that really a need or is that a want? So that's where we want to help them to take that 50%, then that's to their spending. If they want to go on a date, if they want to buy that radio, whatever.
And one thing they'll learn is it's so expensive to go out and eat often.
Absolutely.
They're going to want mom to cook or what's in the house. That was one of the things we saw this week. They didn't want to, they cut their eating out down because they couldn't afford it.
Well, and I'm, you know, parents, you raise your children, of course, to your own discretion, but I would even advise that if you have a teenager working in your house and your family goes out to eat on Sunday, one Sunday a month, let them pay for their own meal.
Oh my gosh. I think my daughter would try to die.
Right, and they probably will. So expect to have to call the paramedics, EMS, whatever, get them up out of the floor. You know, here's my child. You know, what happened? Did they fall? No, I made them pay their bill. So, you know, that may be to where you need to teach them those habits, though, because if you never let them spend in a responsible way like that, they're not going to have a good understanding later on what they, have as far as a cost of life that's coming along.
Yeah.
So we're ready to go to our biggest category?
We've got about 5 minutes, so let's go on to the next one.
Well, let's do that. Our next category, of course, is career.
Okay.
And the career is where you are from age 24 to 64.
Thank you. I was thinking 55, but I can see on their slide it is 64 or older.
It is 64 or older, and we covered that in week 2.
We
can
did.
Actually watch that on our page or on YouTube. But this establishes your pathway of life money. So this is where you're setting the golden road, the brick road that you're laying. And again, we want to divide this into sections. We want to take 10% right off the top in a career as a professional person and give it to church and charity right off the bat. We already know about net and we already know about gross because our career, our salary is being deducted by our benefit packages and everything else. So now we need to take 8% and we're going to put it into an IRA. What kind of IRA would you put it in?
The Roth one.
Yes, that is an awesome answer. Roth IRA is something to do. And then I would say to take 4% and put it into a savings account. So this is helping build, and we've covered this in week 3, that you want to have your company's retirement fund, like a 401k, but then you also want to try to take 12% of your income and put 8% into a Roth IRA or into investments and take 4% into a savings account, because your Roth IRA is down the road, your 4% into your savings is short term. It's money you might need for a flat tire.
And keep in mind, we've been teaching our children as they've come along that 50% was what they had at their discretion, what they got to choose with. So if you start at a young age instilling that in them when they get to 24, 25 years old, all the way the rest of their life, if they learn to live on half their salary, they're investing, they're saving, they're squirreling it away for a rainy day or something that they want to have someday, retire early one day, you need to start planning ahead. You can never, I don't think people plan to fail, they fail to plan.
They do. And that other 50% of your salary, of course, is your money to spend, your discretionary, and of that, and this is so key, 20% of that needs to be no more than, if possible, needs to be your mortgage. And I know that sounds like very little, but to have a good, stable financial future, you need to make sure that 20% of the 50% is your mortgage. Don't dump 75% of the 50% into a mortgage, because you're not going to be able to pay your power bill.
Right.
Which then gets us to the golden pathway of the road we all want to reach one day.
Retirement.
Retirement.
Yes, that's where we want to go.
So at age 65 plus, we're at retirement. And again, if you notice, you have your retirement distributions may begin. Your Medicare and insurance needs, of course we covered that in episode 2, are there. But then I also divided this into sections. And if we are looking at that last slide, 10%, guess where that goes?
Church and charity.
Church and charity. Notice a pattern with church and charity?
It's been that way all along.
All along. We established that from the very beginning. And, we all want to feel like we give something back, right? Well, there's a lifetime of giving back, and think about what a difference you can make if you give 10% for your lifetime.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
So hopefully by that time, you'll be debt-free and have your home owned. You'll have your mortgage paid off if at all possible. At this time, you need to purchase a burial policy or have already purchased a burial policy.
You mean I don't my life insurance just pay for that?
Well, it depends on what kind of life insurance you have.
Okay.
So
well, that needs to be another episode.
That is coming up, and hopefully we may cover that, if not next week, the next.
Okay.
But we're going to talk about life insurance, but you need to have at least a burial policy, and we'll get into the fine details of that. 4% into savings.
And the last part, enjoy.
Enjoy what you have worked for.
All your life.
Absolutely.
Hey, I saw the other day there is a cruise. It's like a 3-month cruise for like $10,000, and you go all around the world.
And that doesn't actually sound that expensive.
Can you imagine? I mean, everything is all your food, your excursions, of course, would cost you money.
Right.
But I'm looking at that as a retirement gift to myself. I guess I'm going to be 60, 65, 67, but I'll be gone for 3 months.
Maybe you need to think about it in dividing it into sections. You and Aunt Vicki contribute so much, and then the kids pay for the rest. So.
They might pay for it all.
Hey, that would be even better, right? They're professionals working. All right, I know that we're just about out of time, but next week we're going to talk about some different things like life insurance, but I also want you to know that we're going to introduce a new part called our weekly stock picks. And we're going to start talking about some companies you may want to look at investing your money into and try to give you a little advice on that.
He does stock markets all the time. He taught students how to do that, and they got some great experience.
They did. They had some great experience.
And we appreciate you watching The Money Tree. Be sure to tell a friend. You can see us on Facebook. We're on Farmers TV, Channel 6, and we appreciate Mountain Valley for their support.
Absolutely. Like our page. Give it a thumbs up. Like
and remember, you can send us questions and something we can address in the future. Thanks. Have a great day.